Our next speaker is Gleekel. Well deserved. So Addie and I have a similar life history in that we both found our way to Southern California, starting in Minnesota. Addie grew up in Minnesota in the land of 10,000, but we both know it's actually 11,000 lakes. Surrounded by water, but not near any ocean. She's been in Southern California because of her love for the ocean for the last several years doing field work, but grew increasingly interested in the social dimension of wildlife conservation and intersectionality, specifically within biodiversity and conservation. So we're so lucky that Addie decided to come and explore those concepts here in the MBC program, and excited to hear what she's going to teach us today about what she's learned about environmental justice. So welcome, Addie.
I was privileged to grow up in Minnesota on Dakota land, just a 2-minute walk from multiple lakes. That proximity to water shaped who I am. From a young age, I found peace, curiosity, and belonging in and around the shores and within the cool waters. That early connection to water laid the foundation for the values I hold today, and it sparked a lifelong love for our environment. In 2018, I moved to California to pursue my degree in biology. It didn't take long for the ocean to captivate me the way the lakes once had. I'd known, the ocean's presence reminded me of the sense of peace I'd known growing up. In fact, I loved the ocean so much, I switched my degree from pre-med to marine biology. I decided to stay after graduation, and for the past 3 years, I've been about a 20-minute car ride from the beach. But even being a 20-minute car ride away turns a casual visit into something that requires planning. Arranging transportation, checking for traffic and tides, and budgeting time for parking. Essentially, it's not just a simple 2-minute walk anymore. This contrast made me reflect more critically about my own relationship with access to water. I grew up with water around the corner. That kind of proximity fosters a different kind of relationship, one woven into your daily life, not just reserved for special occasions. So I started asking, who has that kind of access to water? And what does the data tell us about who has direct access versus who doesn't? In California, for example, public access is essentially a right, but in reality, a legacy of displacement, systemic equality, and exclusionary development has made coastal access far from equitable. Indigenous, Black, and Brown communities have been pushed further away from the shoreline, and what remains today are barriers, often invisible, but deeply entrenched. So this led me to my first question. Who truly has access to the coast? To explore this, I turned to demographic data from the 2020 US Census to understand how physical proximity to the coast might differ by race and ethnicity, comparing the demographics of entire coastal counties to those neighborhoods that are directly on the shoreline. Let's take California, for example. I mapped racial and ethnic breakdowns at the county level, then zoomed in on shoreline demographics, and these are the neighborhoods where in most cases you can walk out your door and have your own 5 to 10-minute walk to the beach. And here's what I found through that comparison. Across all US coastal counties, communities of color make up about 40% of total population, which is a little encouraging. It means that coastal counties overall are more diverse than the US as a whole. But counties are big, and their averages don't always reflect who lives directly on the coast. So I zoomed in, and I looked at the shoreline neighborhoods, and diversity dropped pretty significantly. Only 26% of shoreline residents are communities of color. So while coastal counties may seem relatively diverse on paper, that diversity often doesn't extend to whoever has access to the direct coast. There's a clear disparity. To help communicate these findings, I created an interactive dashboard that visualizes these disparities and allows users to explore demographic trends across coastal regions. My hope is that this tool can support community organizations, nonprofits, anyone making decision makers, anyone in coastal planning, so they can make more informed, equitable coastal planning decisions. helping them identify gaps and prioritizing underrepresented communities. But I also knew data could only tell part of the story. Numbers help illustrate the scale of inequitable coastal access, but they don't capture lived experience, history, or connection. I started looking closer to home in San Diego County and thinking about the Kumeyaay Nation, whose land we stand on today. From early on in this program, we were lucky to explore and learn on Kumeyaay land in the Kendall Frost Marsh and Tijuana River Valley estuary, as well as here at Scripps. The stewards of these lands have faced centuries of forced removal and erasure, yet their connection to the coast still endures. So this led me to my second question: how to support existing efforts that encourage coastal reconnectivity? And to be honest, I approached this at first like a traditional researcher, but I struggled. I brainstormed ideas and drafted proposals. Maybe map current coastal access points and see what barriers there are to meaningful coastal access or engagement, or install QR codes and gain public feedback on possible solutions, or even identify physical pathways and maybe survey Indigenous youth and see what they thought about their connections. These were all interesting ideas, but none of them felt complete, because the truth is there is no singular answer, and the answers won't be found in policy memos or Excel spreadsheets alone. But there are people doing the work. So I shifted my approach and I turned to community. Over the past quarter, I focused on building relationships, attending events, and simply listening. I learned that meaningful community work requires more than academic rigor. It takes trust, humility, and compassion, and reciprocity in the sense of uplifting others' voices while being willing to show up vulnerably myself. One moment especially stuck with me. I had the chance to table at the Valley Center Middle School Career Day Fair with Coach Jackson, founder of Coastal Defenders, we've already heard a little bit about. As we talked to the middle schoolers about coastal careers, their eyes lit up whenever they talked about their love for the ocean or their dreams for becoming marine scientists and environmental advocates. And I really couldn't help but tell them to go follow that dream. The ocean needs you. But I also saw the obstacles in front of them. For many of these students, their love of the ocean exists alongside real barriers, whether it's the cost of getting to the beach, a lack of representation in science fields, or systemic underinvestment in their communities and schools. That moment reminded me that this work is about people. It's about the next generation, and it's about connecting what we see in the data with what we hear in their voices. The dreams, the challenges, and the unbreakable connection to the ocean despite it all. I leaned into collaboration with Coastal Defenders, the grassroots nonprofit Coach Jackson founded to center community and restorative justice, an organization creating equitable pathways in environmental guardianship, STEAM, and aquatics, rooted in culture, access, and opportunity. I focused my time on building relationships I hope will last well beyond this program. One of the Coastal Defenders programs that especially resonated with me was the Indigenous Leadership Youth and Young Adult Program, or ILY. This initiative is supporting Indigenous youth's reconnection with the ocean, providing space for cultural healing, skill building, and the reclamation of land and water stewardship birthrights. Coach has partnered with labs and programs here at Scripps and beyond Scripps to bridge Indigenous knowledge and academic knowledge, opening doors to both. She shared stories of youth who've grown up with ILY, how she's seen them grow into confident, compassionate leaders. That filled me with so much hope, I knew I wanted to do anything I could to help this program. But the path hasn't been easy. Coach has shared the behind-the-scenes efforts it takes, finding buses, securing insurance, juggling logistics, and limited resources. So to highlight ILY's impact, share it with the public, and hopefully gain more support, we began co-creating a website, or story map. It features a program overview, key milestones, an interactive events map, and soon it will trace ILY's legacy all the way back to 2020. The story map is both a celebration and a call to action, a way for youth to see how far they've come and for funders to recognize the power of investing in grassroots leadership like this. The work is already happening. Our job is to support and uplift it. Through this capstone, I've come to truly understand that coastal access is far from equitable. These disparities uncovered in the data aren't just numbers. They're lived realities. They're communities navigating centuries of exclusion, still finding ways to connect, lead, and thrive. This year has reminded me that while data can inform, it's people who lead the way forward. So as I close this chapter, I carry both urgency and hope. The urgency to keep pushing for equitable access, and the hope that comes from knowing we're not starting from scratch, we're joining a movement already in motion. Before I close, I'd like to offer my heartfelt thanks. Camila, my chair, thank you for your steady guidance and unwavering support through this process. Heidi and Bri, your insight and encouragement challenged me to think deeply and act boldly. Coach Jackson, thank you for welcoming me into Coastal Defenders. To Hannah, Samantha, Greg, and Mariah, thank you for making this program what it is, a place where students can truly thrive. Thank you to the Human Ecology Lab for your support and all the fun throughout the year. To my wonderful partner, Patricia, thank you for grounding presence and endless encouragement throughout the ups and downs. To my friends and family, thank you for believing in me. And to my fierce and loving friends that make up this entire cohort. I'm not sure how I got so lucky with a group of such passionate and supportive people, but it's best not to question good things. I can't wait to see how each of you shapes the future. Thank you all for your time. Any questions? Diana?
First of all, congratulations, wonderful work.
Thank you.
My question has to do with, are you guys going to start working with other organizations along the coastline of California to kind of like spread this kind of work?
That is the hope. I think what Coach Jackson is doing is a fantastic model for what other organizations can be doing to really work locally, and I think it would be really awesome to spread it across the California coast and maybe even further. Thank you. The Caribbean, yes.
Hey, Addie, I've got a question. Your project, wonderful job, by the way, is about coastal access and the disparity in who has coastal access. But how do you see this project connecting to a broader conversation about environmental justice?
I mean, I think in general, access is something that I talk about a lot in my life, just access to information, access to education, access to the ocean. I think this just shows that there's been an underinvestment in a lot of different things, and as we push people further away, climate change is just going to get worse, and the people who have stewarded the land are just further and further away from the places that are degrading. So I think in a big overarching goal is just for people to have this kind of work in the front of their minds when they're dealing with anything conservation-wise or environmental-wise.